What's up, you bunch of levitating lizards? That is the best I could come up with. Sometimes I don't feel good about it, okay? So, that's a peek behind the curtain. I don't feel great about that one. But I didn't have a lot of time, and we're here. And I'm sorry in advance. It's a solo episode, okay? God, I wonder if I should say I'm sorry. I'm going to look at the analytics later and just be like, oh, every listener listened for exactly 18 seconds before turning it off. Well, you know what? If that's the price I have to pay, then that's the price I have to pay, for being honest. I'm doing this in one take, damn it. I'm staying true to myself. I'm here solo again. Surprise, Grant's sick again. But also, still, because I don't know, truthfully, if he ever fully recovered. I also don't know if I told you he was sick last week, because I didn't want to, breach his trust and his privacy. But I've done that now, and I've committed to only doing one take, so I am sorry. I do reveal his full home address as well later in the episode. Stay tuned for that. Okay, so we're here. We talk Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, Episode 19. I eat crow. I debate that. I debate that saying, actually, later on in the podcast, because Past Dave has recorded it. Past Dave now, future Dave for you. Past Dave for me. But I was wrong about a great many things last week, which was another solo episode, by the way. If you haven't heard it, feel free to check that out in anticipation of this one. But yeah, we need to talk about Jujutsu Kaisen and some predictions that I was very wrong about. Pluto Episode 3, which really should just be called Pilot. It's practically the pilot episode of the series. We do Newsfeed, a lot of exciting stuff. Very oddly, Barbenheimer and also MCU-centric, and then a shitload of trailers have broken in the last couple of weeks. And then, of course, Frieren. Frieren Episode 13 we talk about, and then also just some of the general conversations around Frieren. And then a stand-up comedy special recommendation 2 weeks in a row. Imagine that. Stand-up. Okay. Big shout-out to the comic book shop on Bank Street at 128 Bank Street in Ottawa, or at thecomicbookshop.com, or on Instagram at comicbookshopbank. They spell shop SHOPPE. And they bring you this podcast. We are supported by them, okay? So they support us. You support them. Something, circle of life, okay? Check out their website, their Instagram. Check out their wares, of which they have many. And again, as I always say, if you're a fan of this podcast, you'll probably like the goods they're hawking down there, okay? Figurines, manga, obviously comics, Gundam build kits, Magic the Gathering. I presume you've heard of that. Having a bit of a renaissance currently. I don't know. Is it having a renaissance? Did it ever go away? I don't know. Check them out. Show them some love. And enjoy the show. Grant, you still have to edit this. So 3, 2, 1. What's up, Fuddruckers? We're back. Another special/different episode of the podcast. You may notice I'm here alone again. 2 weeks in a row. Some are beginning to question Grant's commitment to the podcast. I have to say, I'm not among them, but these rumors have reached my ears. No, in seriousness, as past Dave has probably told you, but again, future Dave for me, Grant's still laid up, okay? He's got stuff going on. He's making a great, swift recovery. And I bet we'll be back on track next week, okay? And we're going to have a lot to catch up on, a big old reunion. But in the meantime, I'm going to bless you with my dulcet tones. I mean, let's be honest, there's not much dulcet about them. I can hear myself in disturbing clarity. This is the kind of thing you look forward to when you're in your early 30s. I've been comparing a new set of over-ear headphones for the last several weeks to decide which will gain my loyalty. I know that you guys are really engaged in this kind of content, so bear with me. But anyway, the point is I was going back and forth between this pair of Sennheiser Momentum 4s and the Sony XM5s. There's a lot to be said on this topic, believe me. I could do a whole episode on it. In fact, maybe I will. Grant can't even stop me. Anyway, but I'm doing this podcast with the XM5s, which I think are going to edge out the Sennheisers for a myriad of reasons. It's complicated. I have a SWOT analysis I'll put up on the Instagram. Don't tempt me. But I can hear myself so clearly. It's distracting. I can hear the cat, but like the swish of Severus's tail behind me. It's absurd. Sam's like behind 2 doors. I can hear her like picking up things on the dresser in the bedroom. It's so weird. And it also makes you wonder, like, can you guys hear that? I don't think you can. But if you can, let me know, because I don't like it. Anyway, all that to say, the audio setup is very sensitive on the Sonys, but like it's all being powered by the mic, and the mic has changed nothing, other than like, you know, I'm hearing the mic in more clarity. So maybe this is what you guys have always heard. I don't know. Like I just heard something. I don't even know if it was in this room. That could have been down the hall for all I know. Anyway, okay, I digress. We have a couple things to catch up on. Primarily, you know, firstly, what is the saying? Eat crow? Have you ever eaten crow? Is it eat crow? Eat your words? Eat something? I don't know. I was wrong. Okay, we'll start there. Let's talk about Jujutsu Kaisen Season 2, Episode 19. There's your spoiler warning. Last week, you know, I talked about Episode 18, and then we had like this Q&A, I think from Abenak, because she's GOAT, about like, what do I think about Mahito's plan to, you know, unhinge Yuji, or to like really mess him up mentally by, you know, potentially killing Nobara, because he revealed that was his plan in last week's episode. And, you know, my take at that time was like, I just don't see it happening. They've killed so many characters. They have wrought so much destruction. And like the Q&A from last week was like, do you even think it's necessary at this point? Like, is it overkill? Does Yuji really need another push? Like, does seeing more people he cares about die, will that, you know what I mean? Will like it lose steam? And my take was, yeah, I just don't think it's likely. I don't think they're likely to kill more major characters. And here we are. So I gave you your spoiler warning, so get it on my face. But yeah, I was wrong. I completely went in the wrong direction. The majority of this episode is on the Mahito fight, but it's like a dual fight because he split himself into a double. One version of him is fighting Nobara, and the other is fighting Yuji. It's kind of like lots of edits, lots of cuts back and forth. By far the coolest part of the episode, well, I think it depends on your point of view, but my favorite part of the episode was when Nobara Kugisaki uses resonance on Mahito. And like, man, I wish Grant was here to talk about like the technique lore of the show, because we talk about that a lot, like how overly complicated is this show at times with its technique stuff. But like, this made legit perfect sense to me, because we've literally seen at the end of season 1, we saw resonance used in this way, where she beat it into one brother and it hurt the other. And she beat it into Mahito's body double in this episode, and it hurt the main body. And the coolest part isn't that worked and that she's like smart enough to pick up on that. The coolest part is that Yuji instantly knew it was her. You know, they had been through that fight before, they have chemistry, that he understands how her technique works, and like he didn't hesitate, and she gave an opportunity. And they had some really great animation, some really good emotional depth from Yuji, voice acting as well, and also just the animation. I already put up a freeze frame or a still from that fight of Yuji saying, you know, I think he says something like, you gave me hope to believe, or you let me believe that I'm not alone, or something in that fight, which I think he probably needed, because, you know, don't forget at the beginning of this episode, Mahito was literally using human hostages and fucking up Yuji, and that probably wasn't going to go well. So, you know, for a minute there, it looks like we might... I never thought in this moment at least, and I'm very hesitant to make any predictions going forward. But in this moment, I never for a minute believed we were going to kill Mahito, right? I guess you could, and like, you know, then I guess the focus of the show becomes more about like further fallout to Gojo's, I don't know, leave of absence and whoever is controlling Geto's marionette corpse. And yeah, I mean, like there's probably some stories worth telling there. But I think like Mahito, I'm guessing, is here for the long term. But again, I'm not gonna fucking predict anything anymore, or at least I'm not gonna attempt to. But yeah, so it doesn't go our way, and they do a really, really good bait and switch on the audience. I've seen this on plenty of reactors channels as well. They got me, and I think they got everybody with this gag where, you know, Mahito runs from Nobara, and the main body is still getting shit kicked by Yuji. And they meet up, and you assume the audience is led to believe that they're going to combine. And maybe that, you know, now consolidated, he'll be able to maybe perhaps fight both at once or something, right? At full strength. But that's not what he does. He switches out, total misdirection, and he slaps my girl in the face, dude. And then, like, you just know instantly. Like, they go to flashback. They cut to the year 2009. That takes up basically the entire second half of the episode, is like seeing what Nobara was like as a child, showing, you know, it's hard to believe. This is why I just don't know where the show is going sometimes, and that's, but I guess both a good thing and a bad thing. But they show Nobara's interactions with two young girls when she's a kid. One is named Fumi, her friend her age, and the other, I can't remember, a bit of a mentor to her, who we later see at the end of the episode, kind of wondering how the other two girls wound up. But one was clearly kind of a bit of a mentor for her that helped Nobara kind of come out of her shell and self-actualize a little bit and grow up a little bit, and gave her, I think, probably a good role model. And then, you know, they wrap that all up. Nobara has this nice little poignant line about, you know, tell everybody, you know, life wasn't so bad, or it wasn't so hard, or something along those lines. And then, like, we see her face, you know, sort of distort. And then there's, like, we get, it goes to a back camera shot, quote camera, from behind her, and we see her face kind of explode, and blood goes into the air, and then she falls over. And, you know, I think the assumption here is that she falls over completely dead, right? Maybe it wasn't enough to warp her body entirely. In fact, Mahito makes note of this. He says, you know, I wasn't able to kill the 7-3 sorcerer, referring to Nanami, on his first moment of contact, but we'll see about Nobara. So it's interesting, right? Like, he gets her in the face. We don't see a total transformation. We just see a weird explosion. And he kind of sets it up like, oh, will it work? Because he doesn't even seem to know. And then we get these new characters introduced in the childhood flashback. And it's like, what are we doing here? As we like to say around here. So I just don't know. It seems like she's probably dead, right? Like, we don't see the corpse. But like, you see the Yuji reaction of him, like, being kind of freaked out and kind of maybe numb at this point. You gotta wonder how he's going to react. But like, is she perma-dead? I don't know. I sincerely don't. We still haven't seen what happened to Maki. The old guy who got set aflame by Jogo is probably gone, but Maki's TBD. Nobara as well. Like, that's just a lot, man. But I don't know. It's the Shibuya incident. Everybody keeps talking about how dark this is. So yeah, I don't know. You know, I feel bummed out. I know Grant really, really liked that character, and I did too. And she definitely felt a little underserved in season 2, just in terms of screen time. But you gotta wonder, like, maybe that's intentional and it makes it hurt a little bit more, because she was so charming and the chemistry was so good in season 1, and you were like, God, I can't wait to go back to that, you know? We got a little tease at the beginning of season 2 when I think she was trying to set up Megami with someone, or was it Yuji? I can't remember. But, you know, we got like a bit of the trio, the lightheartedness, and like but it's blink and you'll miss it kind of thing. It just felt like that character had legs and could go for a little while, especially in the trio. But alas, maybe not. Maybe that's why it stings. I don't know. Definitely unexpected. You know what I mean? It's like, congrats, you have, quote, subverted my expectations, but not in the shitty Game of Thrones way. So I don't know. I guess we'll see. I keep saying I don't know. I lean on a lot of like ums and I don't knows and stuff. Grant's usually here to fill the space, okay? So I'm learning this about myself, so have patience. Yeah, I wonder if you guys were as heartbroken as I was. I saw, I think the social media outcry was intense. Animation-wise, what can I say? Good episode, nothing like fucking crazy, but like good, legit good. What you would kind of expect of Jujutsu Kaisen these days. I haven't heard of any follow-up scandals, but even then, even if I had, it's like, what do you guys want me to say? It's like, yes, people are still overworked and exhausted and like threatening suicide online before they delete it. Like, you know what I mean? Yes, working conditions are still terrible. Yes, production schedules are still unreasonable. That has not changed since last week. Okay. Pluto. Man, I could go on Pluto for a while. I want to have a deep dive with Grant when he's back. But the amount of notes I took in episode 3 are just absurd. Because it's like, I think the takeaway for Pluto E3 is, so the show starts in episode 3. Like, I think episodes 1 and 2, you basically meet the main character or characters. You get a brief introduction to the mystery and the world building. And then I don't know what the pacing is like for the rest of the series or season or whatever. But in Pluto episode 3, so much shit happens. It's like, I was really trying to be concise and only take notes that matter. But it seems like they set up the entire plot for the rest of the season in this one episode. We meet like 5 new characters. We get a ton of clarity on the investigation. A huge amount of shit happens. I tried to write it out. I dictated this to my phone in a debatable state. So let's see if I can summarize this. We meet Uran, Adam's sister, another android that seems to be able to sense fear in both people and animals. Adolf, an aptly named cult member, robot-hating cult member whose family has been permanently impacted by the robot's disruption to society. Pluto, a robot created by another new character named Professor Abula, and Epsilon, one of the 7, a pacifist, deep-thinking robot who fears an incoming conflict. And of course, there's Greshet, who we get confirmation is one of the quote 7 important robots that have the ability to become weapons of mass destruction, I guess. And he's still trying to solve this series of robot murders, while also coming to terms with the fact that maybe some of his memories have been altered. Like, to be fair, they didn't do that in a 22-minute episode of anime. This was an hour long, so they covered a lot of ground, and it doesn't feel disjointed. It feels like a mini movie, and it continually looks like a mini movie. I think Pluto. I think the big drop is Professor, and I could be wrong because I was trying to keep up, but there's a lot going on here. I believe that Professor Abula or Abula, I might have the pronunciation or the name wrong, but it sounds like this mysterious man who set off like an alarm walking through like a robot thing, who claims that most of his organic body was lost in the war, so he's presumably some kind of hybrid. He seems to have, quote, created some of these robots, and Pluto maybe being one of them, and Pluto being this like mysterious man that Uran, Adam's sister, finds alone, kind of like in an underpass, in a body that it turns out he may have temporarily hijacked, because we find out like come on, like, does this not sound convoluted? It's just hard to summarize, right? Like, I don't know, but okay. Here are my takeaways. I think Pluto is this giant, terrifying robot we see at the end that was also foreshadowed earlier in the episode that other people refer to as Bora. I think it's just this thing that brings death and destruction, is potentially also responsible for these, localized tornadoes and the murder of these other specific special 7 robots, of which Greshet is one, Epsilon is one, Hercules is one, more, I'm assuming Adam, I guess. Maybe Uran. I don't know. I mean, is that 5? I don't know. But yeah, so I imagine that Pluto is going to become an important character. Adam, I don't know why. I thought Adam was going to be like the central character to the story, but maybe it's more complex than that. And you know what? I like that. I like a surprise. I don't really know who the quote MC or main character is in this right now. It feels like it's Greshit. It feels like it's Adam's going to be important, but the name of the show is called Pluto, and I'm pretty sure we met Pluto just now. But I could also be wrong, and that Pluto was created by this professor who seems, shall we say, morally complex. I don't know. I don't know. And then there's a character named Adolf who, he just, I think his beef was like, he has childhood trauma because his family was impacted by the robot kind of industry disruption. His brother was killed potentially by a robot, I think by a gun that only Greshit has, or Geshit has. And when that happens, this is the weird thing, is like you can only collect the corpse after 3 years. I don't know if that's like if it's the corpse of a deceased person. That there's some like weird time thing to how the collection of the body works. But he determines afterwards, post-mortem, that his brother was killed by a very special shell that we see Geshit or Greshit has earlier in that episode. So there's like, and then also Greshit may not be like a reliable narrator because of this memory revelation. Like, they packed so much into this episode. I was very engaged, but I was like, okay, this is a lot. Like, I'm curious to see if every episode after this is like this packed, or if they're going to give it a little bit more time to breathe. But I don't know. There's a huge amount of stuff to cover. I'm going to continue to try doing like one a week, but this was very fun. Okay, how about some news? I was actually about 20 minutes into this. Variety, I think, does this series called Actors on Actors, where it's like two actors interviewing each other. Some of the pairings make sense. Like, they're like actors that are like buddies. Like, one of them, I think, from this season is like Robert Downey Jr. and Mark Ruffalo. And they have a lot of experience working together within the MCU and all that. But the leading episode, and this is the one that I turned on, are the two leading casts from Barbenheimer. They got Margot Robbie and Cillian Murphy, and they talk about like this kind of unique experience of competing with one another. What are their individual processes like? What was the process of making each respective film? The reception to both. How kind of it was this crazy moment in pop culture that people actually went out and saw both. Like at that, I remember tracking the box office at that time, and it was like, wow, Barbie's going to double Oppenheimer. But like, they're both billion-dollar movies plus at this point. I don't know if Oppenheimer ever crossed the billion mark, but it's, I think, well into the $800 or $900 million worth of box office. It's absolutely nuts. So that was a really, really fun interview. I highly recommend checking it out if you're into that kind of like artsy-fartsy stuff. Hey, more Margot Robbie news. Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling to star as Danny Ocean's parents in Ocean's 11 prequel. Set, I think, in like Miami in like 1965 or something. I don't know. I don't know if the Ocean's franchise needs more. I gotta be honest. I just exited talking about Barbie and what a great movie it was. And it's Margot Robbie and Ryan Gosling. Again, I just don't know if we need this, but I guess we'll see. Kevin Feige, here's some MCU news a little bit. Kevin Feige has interjected into the pop culture to say, hey, we're not going to bring Iron Man back. Everybody chill. We're going to keep that quote. We're going to keep that moment and not touch that moment again. We all worked very hard for many years to get to that, and we would never want to magically undo it in any way, end quote. So I think maybe that is like, hopefully to dispel rumors that they were considering bringing back, the original 6 or 7 Avengers to try and right the ship that is currently hemorrhaging money. That is the MCU. Further to that, second story on the MCU, Bob Iger. This is kind of like further to the quote from last week. It says that Disney has been making too many sequels recently, but that doesn't mean that the studio will scrap them outright. Quote, moving forward, we will only greenlight a sequel if we believe the story that the creators want to tell is worth telling, end quote. I don't know, it's pretty hilarious. I think I had a riff on this last week about like a buddy of mine got pulled over right? And the cop was like, oh, this is, seatbelt awareness month. And it was like, my friend was like, as opposed to every other month? It's just weird. Like, it's weird that Bob and Kevin would have to specify these things. We're only going to do things if they're good, because as of late, we've been doing things that are exclusively bad. I don't know, man. It's weird to have to even say that. But it's funny, right? Because do you know how you get to this place? You get to this place with the next story in the newsfeed. The Boys Mexico has a spinoff in development. We've got The Boys, we've got Gen V, we've got season 4 trailer of The Boys that just dropped. Who knows? Are they going to wrap it up with a movie? Who knows? But they'll have 2 spin-offs, and God knows how many more seasons before this thing is over. And, like, I don't know, you have to, I think, feel a bit of the irony at play here, right? Like, The Boys exists at this point, like, primarily as, like, what's the word? Piece of social commentary, both on, like, one, how hilariously oversaturated the box office has been with superhero-related content, but it's also, like, attempting, to hold up a bit of a mirror and how absurd we are and absurd mainstream current media is. And I get that and I appreciate it. And does it get a little tired at times? Like, yeah, sure. But you know what? Like, it's a fun show. And like, people actually watch it. And there aren't many hit shows like The Boys out there at this moment. So I'm down, enjoy it. I'm not going to yucky or yum. I think it's fun. But it is funny that, like, it is a hit. And now they're like, yeah, we're never going to stop this. There's no end in sight for the main show. And also, here's 2 spin-offs. And it's only up from here. And it's like the Obi-Wan quote, you know what I mean? Until now, you have become the very thing you swore to destroy. You know what I'm saying? It's kind of funny. But then again, let's be real. It is made by fucking Amazon and Seth Rogen. And believe me, Seth Rogen is not a saint, all right? You can support Houseplant all you want, but look into it. I'm kidding. He's probably fine. Okay, I mentioned The Boys Season 4 trailer was released. There's a shitload of trailers that have dropped in the last 7 days. The Boys Season 4, House of the Dragon Season 2, coming summer 2024. Suicide Squad has an anime trailer that dropped, which actually looks kind of legit interesting. God, why? Ted has a prequel series that a trailer dropped for, which is hitting Peacock in January. God, who watches Peacock? Are you listening to this watching the Peacock? Apparently, like, a great many of you that listen are in the United States, where I believe Peacock is hosted. How many are listed? What's the crossover like between the Part-Time Otaku podcast, Venn diagram, and overlaid on top of Peacock? I imagine we have as many listeners as they have subscribers, and that's mostly because I don't believe they're successful. Moving on, and okay, trailer I actually care about. New trailer for HBO's True Detective. Season 4 starring Jodie Foster. Getting close here. January 14th this thing comes out. I'm going to check it out. I haven't missed an episode of True Detective. I think Season 1, not a hot take, is like one of the best seasons of TV ever made. And they seem to be hinting that they might be returning to that timeline, or at least that story, with like some Carcosa callbacks in the trailers. I'm trying not to look too closely, but that is the chatter. So, I don't know. Interesting, I suppose. Okay, that's it for news and trailers that have dropped. Okay, Frieren. Episode 13. I gotta say, decent episode, but among the weaker ones for me. Okay, first let's talk about episode 13, and then we'll talk about Frieren like at large for like a hot second. Basically, this is a recruitment episode. She saves a priest who's like stuck in like some quicksand. I believe his name is Sign. She saves him. Stark gets bit by a snake. Lo and behold, Sign turns out to be a healing priest prodigy. I can do this. A healing priest prodigy. Nailed it. You don't have to think about it too hard. Don't look at the words when you're stuck like that. So he saves Stark, and then they basically spend the rest of the episode trying to recruit him. You know, some of it's funny, some of it's cute, some of it's annoying. But like that is the bulk of the episode, and in the end he of course decides to join them. So the 4 of them are set out on their long journey literally to heaven. I think I even put it on our podcast this week that or the Instagram rather, at Part-Time Otaku Podcast, which I'm sure you're following, along with our Instagram, along with our TikTok rather. Good lord. But I think my anime list, like, people have recently like bombarded Frieren Beyond Journey's End with like a bunch of top ratings that have knocked Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood out of the number 1 spot. I guess I'll briefly touch on this and say 2 things. 1, this show is 13 episodes into its first season. If you don't think they have time to ruin it, I don't think you've watched anime before. So 1, it is, one, they have time to ruin it. 2, it is absolutely premature. And 3, like, the whole bombarding reviews thing is just weird. But, okay, 4, I will relent on this. And this isn't, regardless of my attachment to Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, especially, like, having a dope, awesome tattoo of it. Trying not to carry my bias in here. But I have heard that, like, anytime a show takes the number 1 spot, like, all these Full Metal Alchemist fans come out of the woodwork and they intentionally review bomb that show and then, like, leave new reviews on Full Metal to, like, make sure it keeps its number 1 spot. That's just juvenile. It is tricky, though. Like, I will say, like, you think about, like, highest rated things on, Rotten Tomatoes, IMDb, my anime list. It's tricky because these platforms have only been around with critical user bases for not long at all. Like, how old is the internet? And then think about how long film has been going on for. And, like, I don't know. It's not a great representation of what a true, quote, all-time list should really be, right? I'm not saying I have the right answer. I'm just saying, like, every anime hasn't been, like, community voted. They haven't had a fair representation just by basis of how long these platforms have been available versus the actual art form itself. But anyway, good episode of Frieren. I don't know if it's the best anime on the planet, and to say that it is after 13 episodes is a little nuts. Okay, last thing, quick little recommendation for you. Another comedy special. I'm not doing this on purpose. I think, what was it? Nick Katz? Something Katz last week. It's probably Larry Katz? I don't know. Look at last week. What do I know? What do I care? This week, it's Nick Mullen. Special's called Year of the Dragon. It's direct on YouTube. It's got over 600,000 views in less than 24 hours. Last time I checked. I have not heard of Nick Mullen. Like, I mean, I've heard of him. I've never heard him speak. It got posted to the Adam Freeland show channel on YouTube. But again, just Google or YouTube, Nick Mullen comedy special or Nick Mullen Year of the Dragon, and you'll be directed to it. It has been a sincerely fantastic year for comedy. Some of my favorite specials in a long time have come out this year. And I think, when we look at 2023 kind of in the rearview mirror, I don't know if we'll do like a top 5 podcast again or what we're going to do. That will actually require Grant to attend one of them, of course, for end of year. But, maybe we should do like a little bonus section of like some of my favorite or our favorite stand-up specials that have come out this year. Because there have just been so many. And the level, it sincerely feels like it's rising. But, I'm always a little reticent to bring up stand-up comedy in general because, stand-up tends to intentionally... It depends on the comic, but I would say Nick Mullen is no exception in this case, that he brings up... there are a lot of comics that intentionally bring up divisive, controversial subjects to make you laugh at them and kind of disarm you about it, and things aren't so serious, and it's comedy, right? So I think if jokes about real topics or real life topics upset you, and especially if you really don't love anything remotely politically taboo, then you probably won't enjoy this special or most of comedy. But if you're a stand-up fan, highly recommend it. It's really cool to see these comics putting their own specials out self-produced and seeing them get more views independently than they would if they went with a major streaming partner. So definitely support it if you can. If you're a fan, highly recommend it. Okay, Nick Mullen, You're the Dragon. I think that's it. I told you this would be a quick one, 31 minutes. I think, again, this is still evidence that I can talk alone in a room for sustained periods of time. And I'm like in a rush, you know? I'm hungry. I have things to do. So this isn't bad. But I think, you know, we're all probably thinking the same thing. I would probably prefer Grant to be here. If nothing else, to remind me that I'm not going insane recording these alone. But also for his input and for his thought and for me to bounce off of. We're a team, Grant and I, right? It's the Part-Time Otaku podcast, not the Dave talks everybody to sleep in a white padded room podcast. So thanks for listening. Hopefully Grant's feeling better and he's back next week. Regardless, I'm sure we'll have an episode out exactly in a week's time. Please follow us on TikTok and on Instagram at Part-Time Otaku Podcast. Don't forget to support the comic book shop on Bang Street, which past Dave will have told you all about, I'm sure. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next week. Cheers.